like to second something that Michael said. I think what we're looking at Kent is that every student who graduates with a master's degree has what we call a portfolio, a knowledge management portfolio, which is an example of something that they've done for an organization in every one of the core courses that they've taken, as well as any electives. I'd also like to suggest that how important it is to consider what you mentioned about the open learning. And this is a challenge for somebody who's in the academic environment, because I want to now, you know, I have the courses I teach that the university tells me to teach, but I want to work with open study folks, right? And put all of my KM courses out there, and frankly, I want to use open study to pilot some new courses, right? And see how they work outside of the university. And then if they work, then I bring them in. But it's another way of sort of spreading the learning of KM. And I think we, just what Mike was saying, we need to break, this is a model that we need to really look at breaking. I'm sorry. I'm going to ask Doug to edit this out of the video. But teaching KM in a 1900s academic environment is challenging, because all of the concepts about how you teach and why you teach from the 1900s are not well aligned with why we're doing KM in the 21st century.
You got the dates wrong, Denise. We go back to the medieval ages.
Well, I'm not that old.
Yeah, but knowledge sharing and knowledge leveraging at the university goes back to the, and we're still following the same paradigm. We have a paradigm paralysis. Tragically, you're not going to get rid of it, so you got to just figure out how to work around it.
I want to add something. Now I can jump in as a moderator, right? But I want to, based on my experience with KM, because I keep hearing that we don't need to do certain things, and we do need to integrate it with other areas, which I do agree. And even with intellectual capital, before you can actually move forward with it, you must understand business management so that you know the components you're going to work with. I think we spend a lot of time trying to define knowledge, and again, the flag is up. This is kind of my concept, okay? Trying to define knowledge and trying to find knowledge management, so to speak. I kind of get a little confused with all of that, because when I look in the classes and we say, okay, we need to teach them this knowledge management, when my students come through and I ask them to do a KM strategy, okay, and strategy being the operative word, that they should understand how it was done in business and the way it's supposed to be moving forward, so that they can recognize the knowledge that they need to improve the performance. They have no idea of how to do a strategy, okay, which is critical. So what we do is we go back and I say, go to your organization and take a look at it and tell me any place within it, and we don't have to go at the overarching level, but know what the vision and the mission are. Go down, and even in your own area, take a look and see if something is missing that knowledge would help to improve it, okay? And then let's start talking about it. And even like recently, and this is why I think we got to watch the language. I had some students, great idea, looked at TSA and said, we are going to, this was their thing, we are going to capture the knowledge so that we can put knowledge management into place and improve the effectiveness and efficiency of the organization. What does that mean? Knowledge management is what it is, and it's going to be. But the bottom line is, I went back to it and I said, what are you trying to say? Well, we have these high-performing teams, and we want to transfer the knowledge of these high-performing teams over to these other teams that don't perform as well. So my first look at them was, well, why don't you say that? And I said, say that you're going to transfer the knowledge. Now, what knowledge are you getting from them? How they operate with this? Then say that. Unfortunately, fundamental to KM is its context. You cannot do KM unless you understand the business that you're within. And in order to understand the business that you're within, you have to already have the previous academic disciplines. There's no way around it. So we can go ahead and integrate it, and we'll do really well. But we got to stop thinking that KM needs to be here by itself. And we need to define it and start showing how we can integrate what already exists so that we can complement it with the knowledge that's out there. That's, again, just the moderator's spell.
Question that anyone on the panel or anyone in the audience, if you want to chime in, since there seems to be so much what we think of as non-KM related that might be core, do you think it's important that that someone needs to be working in a KM situation before taking the courses, or is there some sort of prerequisite, like you need to come from or have a couple of engineering courses or library science or something like that? Is there something that needs to feed into what we're talking about for the core and electives? That's just my question.
Yeah, can I try to answer that, Annie? Ellen, first of all, I need to thank you publicly for building that building on the corner, because that was the roughest road I've ever seen in my life, and now it's paved. But they only paved one side of it.
They're also putting up a sidewalk.
They only paved one side of the road. That's Washington, and they want to become a state. Okay, enough commentary. I lost the question. Prerequisites. I mentioned to you when I was in SAIC, we were doing knowledge management without being aware of it. We didn't have the names. Like gravity was around before Newton came up with the word gravity. When I was in the Marine Corps, we did a lot of knowledge management, from the way we train our officers, to the way we fight, to the way we think. So I don't think any one of us has not been exposed to knowledge management. I think when you start talking to us, we confuse you with the words and the vocabulary of KM, but for the most part, the idea of leveraging knowledge has been going on forever. Women leverage it better than men in general. So I don't think that's a prerequisite. I think when people like myself get involved with it, you say, oh yeah, I've been doing that, and I've been successful. Oh yeah, I've been doing that, but why didn't I succeed? Because we had a barrier here, you know. So in general, I think that all of us have been exposed. Nothing is new here. What is new, like any discipline, from information management to systems engineering, is the codification of it, the putting it into some structure and validating it with applications and vice versa. And right now, we need frameworks, and we need things to help us do that. We all think like in paradigms and mental models. We know that. We have so much science on the way we think. So we need something in our discipline to help advocate it, because right now it's still chaos. Now we can muddle through everything. I mean, America is good at that. But why get 7% return on your assets when you can get 25%?
Can I build off of that? Okay. I think to get to the question, I think there's a danger in having prerequisites. As I look at a lot of my students for the most part in my human and organizational learning class are work development students who wouldn't even consider taking an engineering course because they've never had engineering degrees. And I think maybe the holds true as well. I have quite a few people that come into my course and say, wow, I want to be doing organizational development. I am doing organizational development, but no one calls it that, so I wouldn't have applied to your program. So part of, I guess, what I feel like we need to be careful about is how we are using the terms. And there's a benefit of using knowledge management as a term, because now we're starting to talk about something unified and we're bringing our ideas together. But then there's a disadvantage of folks who come in, and we've heard that across the panel, of, wow, I was always doing knowledge management, I just didn't call it that. And I think we might be creating a silo for knowledge professionals just simply by saying, oftentimes they come out of schools of engineering, or those who are not, knowledge management professionals. Are we leaving people out of the opportunities to take some of those roles because we haven't called them that across the board? And that's a difficult balance, I think, in many ways. A lot of my students will say, I want to be the chief learning officer versus the chief knowledge officer. Probably very similar functions in most organizations. But they may not go after the chief knowledge officer role because they don't have what they call the knowledge management background. And so I don't know what the answer is to that in terms of developing a curriculum and how do we map out a curriculum and carve out a niche while also keeping it open and open to other people pursuing that as well. So just put that out there as a thought.
Go ahead.
If I can add. This is a very good question. thank you for asking it. I think this is something that we've been struggling with, depending on where KM is. If KM is in the library school, then there's going to be a set of prerequisites for that. If it's in the IT, computer science is going to be the same. So it's kind of how do people perceive knowledge management? And in a lot of cases, people think knowledge management is a subset of what they do, and not the other way around. So until KM really gain its identity and kind of become recognized, and people have a better understanding with it, this issue is going to continue to be an issue of whether we should have this prerequisite or that, heavy on this, light on that. As I said, there are certain things. I mean, we should really be asking the question, as we discussed yesterday, what are the set of problems that a knowledge management professional will solve, and what are kind of problems we deal with? And based on that, we devise the courses that help people to solve the problem. So until we have a discipline that it has its own defined set of problems, we will struggle with those issues.
I think was someone else that was.
I was just going to say I concur. I think to establish rigid prerequisites could be artificially limiting to the discipline and to the participants. If you look at the KM program at the Bureau, for example, we have individuals that range all the way from advanced technology backgrounds in engineering all the way to the soft sciences, communication, information management, library sciences, and the like. So they run the full spectrum, and I think the diversity of the team and their backgrounds provides a more rich and balanced approach to our solutions, because when something comes up, they come at it from a multidisciplinary approach, and for us it's added great value. When they're all of the same ilk and cut, we end up with almost predefined answers to our approaches, and I think that adds less value.
I think that I concur with that. I think you want a rich set of backgrounds, so you don't want to have a lot of prerequisites. I think what I would rather see is that as part of the education, there be a requirement that you get an actual project out in the real world. So you may not come to it with anything, but you should get something while you're doing it. And I think, speaking from my point of view, I'm glad to offer that. I've done that before. I remember helping a student at Kent State who needed to do master's research and then ended up getting a job at HP where I was working. So that's a good combination, I think, for everyone. We got something out of it, she got something out of it. So I would say engage the people in this room who are not in academia to help you with those real projects, and then we'll also probably be glad to help you with your teaching. If you ask me to teach something, I'll be glad to do it.